Vault 440 Audio presents Ash Rats, Stories from the Wasteland, a Fallout audio anthology. Episode 3, Henry, the Outlander.
I don't get many visitors up here. Don't want them, don't need them. But the mountains don't ask what you want. They just throw whatever's crawling around at your doorstep. Today, it threw me a doozy.
There are a million stories in the wasteland. This is one of them.
The mountains keep their own kind of silence, not the peaceful sort you see on old pre-war postcards with cabins and smoke curling from chimneys. This silence is heavier, pressed down by ash winds and the long memory of things that died screaming. Most folks don't last up here, don't want to. Too cold, too empty, too far from the scraps of civilization. Suited me just fine. Took me near a year to get the place livable, and that was almost 20 years ago. Found what was left of an old ranger outpost, half caved in and crawling with ferals. Don't look like much, but it's mine. Keeps the storms out and the wolves off my back. Well, keeps most things out. The rest, that's where Bear comes in. Don't let the name fool you. He's a scrawny little dachshund with more bark than bite, but I'll be damned if he doesn't think he's the meanest son of a bitch in the mountains. Chases mole rats like they owe him caps. Even tried to stare down a radstag once. I had to scoop him up before he got himself turned into a chew toy. Truth is, he doesn't do much heavy lifting, but he keeps me honest. Gives me someone to talk to when the nights get long. Better than talking to myself anyway. Though half the time he don't listen. Either way, we do our best, and the both of us hold the fort down. I wake before the sun, like always. Habit, not choice. Sleep don't come easy anymore, not with the old bones creaking and the wind clawing at the shutters. Bear's already up, sitting by the table with that look, the one that says I'll starve if you don't feed me in the next 30 seconds. I toss him a scrap of Brahmin jerky. He wolfs it down, then stares at me like he's owed more. That's it, Piglet. Rations don't stretch on forever. He growls, low and theatrical, before flopping down at my boots with a grunt. Little dog's got more attitude than sense. Breakfast for me is worse. A bitter brew I call coffee, though it's nothing but boiled mountain roots I dried over the fire last summer. Smells like burnt tires, tastes like regret, but it warms the belly and clears the fog in my head. I sip it slow, staring at the boards of the cabin, patched and repatched over years of work. A green road sign covers the jagged hole left by a shotgun years back. Route 28, north to Lexington. Sometimes I wonder what that road looked like when cars still rolled down it, when kids leaned out windows laughing. I've seen pictures in books, but I will never see it for myself. Near the pantry, a battered Vault-Tec lunchbox serves as a catch-all for gun oil and screws. One of those old Enclave recruitment posters is nailed over a leaky spot in the ceiling. And a license plate, green and rusted, leans against a shelf, bearing some long-forgotten combination of letters and numbers. 7C2491. I like to think whoever owned it once had some place to go. That world is gone. Bear doesn't care much for the history lessons. He's sitting next to the table, tail wagging, eyes daring me to feed him again. I give in to the guilt and toss him a scrap of jerky. He wolfs it down, then gives me the side eye. Got a small kitchen corner with a wood-burning stove, a fireplace beside it, and a bed tucked away in the far end. Cozy enough, though Bear thinks it belongs to him. Most nights he curls up in the blankets like a king. Only time he gives it up is when I light a fire in the hearth. Then he's sprawled belly up in front of it, snoring like thunder. The place has a shower, too, of sorts. Cold as sin. I rigged gravity piping from a rain catch I set up higher on the ridge. Water runs down straight into a pipe inside, enough pressure to get the job done. Keeps me clean, keeps infection down, and helps me smell less like I live in the guts of a mountain. Every now and then, when the cold really gets in my bones, I'll heat buckets of water on the stove and pour them into the old tub. Thing still works, more or less. Crack runs down one side so it won't hold water past a certain point, but it's enough for a soak if I'm quick about it. Small luxury in a world where luxuries are hard to come by. Cabin's built on stilts, about 4 feet off the ground. Safer that way. Critters don't get underfoot so easy, and I can see what's coming before it sees me. Best part's the covered porch. Wraps 3/4 around the cabin and is covered against the storms. Makes a fine spot to sit, rifle across my lap, watching the ridge trails. Nothing sneaks up on me here. Out front, I've carved out a patch of dirt for a garden. Got corn and carrots growing, a few gourds, and even some mutt fruit that don't taste half bad if you boil them long enough. Protein's another story, though. A little more work. Radstag when I can find one, though most days it's mole rats or mongrels sniffing around my traps. There's one mole rat in particular that's been my sworn enemy for near a year now. Sneaky bastard slips through the fence, nicks carrots, tears up the roots. I've sprung traps, set bait, even stayed up 2 nights straight on the porch with my rifle waiting for him to show. Nothing. Smartest mole rat I've ever met, which ain't saying much but enough to keep me humble. One of these days I'll get him. By the time the sun's crawling over the peaks, I'm dressed, rifle slung across my back, pockets full of cartridges I scrounged years ago and rationed careful as gold. I never step outside without a gun, not up here. My hunting rifle's a Tinker Tom Special, .308. I picked it up years back off some poor fellow. Rather not talk about that. I also have a 10mm sidearm. Rides on my hip for when things get close and mean. As for clothes, well, same as the cabin, patched together, half scavenged, half stubbornness. Old fatigues faded to the color of dust, knees stitched so many times the thread's a map of its own. I have a long leather coat to keep the mountain wind from cutting me in half, smells faintly of wood smoke and old blood no matter how many times I air it out. A ragged scarf I swap for a neck warmer when the snow comes. Topped off with a cowboy hat I dragged out of a Fallon store that had been picked clean years ago. Found it wedged behind a collapsed shelf like it was waiting for me. Brims frayed, sun-cracked, but it still does its job. Out here, clothes ain't style. They're survival. You take what you can and make it work. Bear's got his outfit as well. Little patchwork camo I stitched together from scraps. Looks ridiculous, but keeps him warm and protected. He has an old Nuka-Cola pin he found on a trail. It's a nice little accessory, a trinket from the old world. I think he likes it. He struts around in it like a general marching to war. Stepping out onto the porch, the cold mountain air hits me sharp in the lungs. I take a slow walk through the patch I've coaxed into something resembling a garden. corn stalks standing crooked but proud, carrots with their frayed greens, even a mutt fruit bush that's hanging on despite the thin soil. Not much, but it's honest. Keeps us fed. Bear trots at my heels, nose twitching like he's the overseer of the whole operation. I kneel down to check a stalk when the earth shifts at the edge of the patch. Then, like a devil from the ground, out comes that same blasted mole rat, the bane of my mornings. Honery little bastard snatches a corn stalk in its teeth and starts dragging it back down like it's hauling treasure. Like a reflex, I'm already moving, hands snapping to the 10 mil at my side. Bear's barking bloody murder, scrambling for the stairs with his short legs working double time like he's trying to launch himself at the thing through sheer will. I fire off 2 quick shots. Dirt flies. Corn husks scatter. But that rat's quicker than I'll ever be, slipping down under before I can line up a clean sight. The yard goes quiet. Dead quiet. Me and Bear freeze, scanning with our eyes, listening to the silence press down. You never win when you chase a mole rat. Gotta let it come to you. And sure enough, it does. Pops up on the far side of the cabin like it's mocking me. I squeeze off another shot. Bullet misses by a mile and punches a neat hole straight through the wall of my firewood shelter. Bear pauses his barking just long enough to glance back at me like it's my fault. The rat ducks under again, and when it surfaces the last time, it does so slow, almost deliberate, just enough for us to lock eyes. Like it knows, like it's playing a game. Then it's gone again, earth swallowing it up, leaving the place quiet except for Bear's panting. I let out a long breath, holster the pistol. One of these days, that rat is gonna be stew. I knew that evil creature will be back. We head down the narrow trail, frost crunching underfoot, to check the snares and traps scattered along the slope. Another day in the wasteland, same as the last. Or so I thought. I follow the trail down the ridge, Bear strutting ahead like he owns the mountain. Most days it's the usual. Broken snares, chewed roots, maybe a mole rat too stupid to stay away. Today it ain't usual. I round a bend and freeze. One of my snares is ripped apart, the rope shredded, blood on the rocks. My stomach tightens, and then I see him, sprawled on the ground, barely moving, clothes torn, chest rising and falling in shallow gasps. He's in bad shape, mauled, torn up bad. Claw marks deep enough to show bone. By the looks of it, a yaoguai got to him. Strange, though. They don't usually leave scraps behind, let alone someone still breathing. Bear takes a few quick sniffs of our new friend and then trots on ahead. The little mutt climbs a fallen tree trunk, perches on top, ears pricked, tail stiff, eyes scanning the slope like a general calling the roll, head swiveling side to side, sniffing the wind. I lower myself to my knees, heart hammering. This isn't a wandering trader or a lucky survivor. Whatever got him out here didn't leave much choice, and it didn't finish the job. Not yet. He's maybe early 30s, lean, built like he's seen more fights than he cares to admit. Shaved head, though the stubble growing back makes it look like he's been roughing it for a while. Face streaked with dirt and blood, a faint scar along his jaw catching the morning sun. Not a raider, at least not the kind wearing spikes and screaming, but there's a hardness to him, the kind that says he could hurt you without blinking if he had to. Eyes closed now, but I can tell they've seen the world at its worst, and somehow he's still here. Would have been easy to let him be, let the scavengers have their supper. Lord knows I've done worse. But something about the way his hand was still clenched tight around that busted rifle made me think he wasn't the giving up type. I cursed under my breath and checked the ridgeline, contemplating my next move. sound hits first, a guttural roar that makes your insides shake loose. And then it's there, a Yaoguai, big as a Brahmin, fur matted with blood and dirt, eyes burning mean. It swipes, and I damn near lose my head. I stumble back, slower than I used to be, but I've danced with these devils before. They always strike, circle, and come back again. Gives you just enough time to think, to breathe. Bear's barking like a mad thing, darting between me and the beast. The Yaoguai swings again, massive claws like knives, and clips him. Bear yelps, flung into the brush. My gut twists, but I catch sight of him scrambling under a log, eyes wide, still alive. That dog will never learn. I draw my 10 mil and empty what's left in the clip. They slam into the monster's hide like pebbles on iron. Just pisses it off. It roars, slobber spraying, and charges. I run, legs pumping, lungs burning. I make for the trees. 2 trunks, close set, just wide enough for me to dive through. I slam against the dirt, roll, and hear the beast hit wood with a crunch that rattles and falls. It thrashes, wedged, bellowing, snapping branches as it tears itself free. I've got seconds. Rifle slung across my back. I drag it forward, heart slamming, line up the iron sight as the Yaoguai barrels toward me. I squeeze the trigger, shot cracks. The round smashes into its skull. I see bone, blood, a flash of stunned fury. For a heartbeat, it looks like it's going down, but the beast just shakes its head, snarling, half blind now, staggering. Then it turns, snaps its jaws, roars like thunder, and lumbers back into the brush. Gone. I keep the rifle leveled at the trees, chest heaving. My hands don't shake till after. I tell myself on the spot that one day soon I will kill that thing once and for all. From under the log, Bear gives a muffled bark, like he's agreeing. I stand there motionless, waiting for the Yaoguai to come barreling back out. My heart's pounding in my ears, breath ragged, but nothing stirs. Just the forest, quiet again, like it's swallowed the beast whole. That's when I glance back and see him, the stranger, still there in the dirt where I found him. Bloody, broken, mauled half to hell, but somehow alive. I should leave him. Lord knows I've left plenty behind in my time. Done worse things, too. Things that don't wash off no matter how many years you hide in the mountains. But maybe dragging one man back from death's doorstep evens the scales. Just a notch. Balance the universe, if such a thing's possible. I drop to one knee, pull a coil of rope from my pack. Hands work quick, looping it under his arms, tying it tight across his chest. He groans but doesn't wake. Bear limps back from his log, tail low, but he comes right up to sniff the man, ears twitching. Little fella's skeptical, but he doesn't bark. Lucky for us, we ain't far. If he'd been across the gorge, I'd never get him up. But here, just a slope, nothing I can't manage, even with joints that creak like rotten floorboards and muscles that ache like rusted hinges. I cinch the knots tight. I plant my boots, brace my back, and start dragging. Dirt and pine needles scrape under the man as I haul him inch by inch. Every step burns, every pull reminds me I'm not the young bastard I used to be. But the cabin's there, up ahead, silhouetted against the mountain, waiting. And for the first time in a long while, I'm bringing someone home. Getting him inside was the easy part. Keeping him alive, that was the trick. I laid him out near the fire, Bear's usual sprawl. The dog just sat there, staring at me like I'd crossed some sacred line. One of those slow, judging side eyes that only a dog can manage. Then he gave a huff, waddled over to my bed, jumped up and burrowed under the blanket like he owned it. Guess I'd be sleeping on the chair for a while. The wounds were bad, real bad. One gash ran shoulder to hip, deep enough to show things a man shouldn't see outside his own skin. No doctor's kit, So I boiled and sterilized some old fishing line and sewing thread the best I could, and started stitching. Ugly work, uneven, but it held. I was working on the smaller cuts by his neck when I noticed a necklace, worn and cracked, a small carved charm swinging gently with his shallow breaths. I reached for it, thinking I could move it out of the way, but before I could pull it free, his hand shot up, weak but firm, gripping my wrist. He didn't speak much, just enough rasp to make the point clear. Leave it. I froze. Something about that gesture, stubborn, quiet, protective, told me there was more to that little piece of leather than some trinket. So I left it, adjusted my stitches around it, careful not to tug. Bear, meanwhile, had moved closer, snout sniffing, ears twitching. Something about it, the way the stranger clutched it, made me realize it wasn't just a keepsake. It was a token, something meant to outlast all the pain he'd carried. I didn't know what it meant yet, didn't have to. I rinsed the rest with boiled water and what was left of my liquor. The stink of rot and spirits filled the cabin, a mix that clung to the walls and my hands. He groaned through it, even unconscious. Once he seemed stable, I rigged up a cot quick as I could. An old rusty bed frame I had out back, I lashed it with rope layered with hides and old cloth. Nothing comfortable, but softer than the floor and close enough to the fire to keep him from freezing. Days blurred together. Me feeding the fire, swapping out rags, listening to his breathing rattle in the dark. I almost thought he wouldn't make it, but then, one morning, frost glazing the window, he stirred. Eyes cracked open, dull but searching. I leaned in close, checking the heat of his skin. Too hot. Infection had its claws in him. His lips moved, broken sounds, nothing strong enough to carry. Didn't matter. I knew the questions, where he was, who I was, why he wasn't dead already. I didn't bother answering him. What mattered was the fever climbing through him, burning hotter than the fire he lay beside. Infection kills quick, and all I could do was hold it back with boiled water, scraps of cloth, and a stubborn streak. Bear padded over once, nose twitching at the man's hand. The stranger managed the faintest smile, and Bear actually stayed put. Watched him, ears up, like he was trying to decide if this half-dead fool was worth the fire's warmth. I kept working, but in the back of my mind I felt it. Something about this one wasn't simple. The way he carried himself, even in sleep, like a man with a burden heavier than wounds. I'd patched holes before, done my share of keeping bodies alive when they didn't deserve it. But something told me this was different, and it left me wondering, as I sat there with sore hands and aching joints, if I hadn't just brought more trouble into my cabin than any Yao Guai ever could. The cuts had held long enough for him to breathe easier, but the fever climbing through him wasn't waiting for comfort. I knew what had to be done. Meds, stim packs, the sort that might save him from infection, or at least give him a fighting chance. I used my last stim pack back in the summer after a nasty run-in with a blood bug, so there wasn't a spare sitting around, and that meant a trip into town to a clinic, a day's hike down the mountain, a place crawling with super mutants. I didn't like leaving the cabin if I didn't have to, especially to potentially cross paths with those smelly green giants. The mountains are safe because I know every rock, every shadow. Town? That was chaos dressed up as survival. But I couldn't let him die. Not here, not on my watch. I started packing, careful and methodical. A few scraps of food left by the bed, water in a tin cup. Bear got his portion too, placed neatly on the floor where he could reach it without knocking the stranger around. a note pinned to the stranger's ragged blanket, just enough to say, "Gone to get meds. Be back soon." I stacked a pile of oak in the fireplace, saved for a winter emergency, long burns to keep the cabin warm through the cold nights. It won't burn 2 days, but I figured with some extra blankets and a little luck it might buy us enough time. Bear's staying put. I can't risk slowing down, and he's still a little rattled from that Yaoguai mess. He'll hold the fort here, keep watch, and pray he doesn't try to chew the stranger alive. I hoisted my pack, checked my rifle and sidearm one last time, and stepped onto the porch. The wind whipped through the mountains, cold enough to sting my face, but spring was creeping in, just enough that I might make it down and back before it got brutal. No turning back now. If he was going to live, I had to risk the trip. Stepping down the cabin steps, my eyes sweep over the garden I'd coaxed into something edible. Corn stalks, carrots, a few stubborn mutt fruit bushes clinging. That's when the little bastard showed up, the mole rat, popping up like it had planned its timing just to piss me off. My hand twitched toward the 10mm, heart skipping a beat. But then I remembered. I needed every round I had for the clinic trip, not some oversized rat with a death wish. So I froze, glaring at it, teeth gritted. The mole rat paused, chest puffed as if daring me to act, then dipped back down into the dirt, victorious for the moment. I shook my head, muttering under my breath, "One of these days, one of these days." Bushes scratched at my coat as I crouched low, eyes on the clinic below. It was a long trip down the mountain, but mostly uneventful. No blood bugs, no Yaoguai, and thank the wasteland gods, no falling trees to squash me. I eased the rifle off my back. I scanned the clinic, mutants lumbering between the crumbling front steps and what used to be the parking lot, meat bags hanging like rotten fruit from lampposts. The air reeked of iron and decay, thick enough to taste. Then I saw it. A side door half covered in ivy, tucked behind a collapsed wing of the building. The lock looked old and probably brittle enough to pick. If I was careful, quiet, and lucky, I could make it to that door without them ever knowing. I slung the rifle back and started down the hill, low and steady. The brush thinned, forcing me into a crawl. One mutant stomped by close enough I could smell its skin cooking under the sun. I froze, breath locked in my chest. When it finally turned away, I slipped behind a rust-eaten car, then another, then an old stone wall that barely stood upright. Each movement calculated, old bones, but still sharp instincts. The side door loomed just ahead. Close enough now I could hear the mutants grunting to each other. I waited. I counted breaths. Then I moved. If I timed it right, maybe I could slip inside without drawing the mutants' attention. Every step from here was going to be delicate. One wrong move, and the whole clinic would know I was there. And the stranger's fate would be sealed before I even got inside. As I predicted, the lock was barely there, rusted away by years of neglect. A few twists, a shove, and the door groaned open. I slipped inside, low and quiet, the stale air of the clinic hitting me first, rot, rust, and that unmistakable tang of mutant sweat. The hallways were a maze of peeling paint and faded signs, but the labels guided me. Storage, pharmacy, med supply. I moved slow, listening, weighing each step. No need to run into something before I even got what I came for. Years out here had taught me to fight smarter, not harder. At last, I found the stash. Cabinets and bins, not much left, but enough. I grabbed a couple stim packs, some antibiotic vials, and tossed them into my pack, double-checking each one. I moved fast but thorough, sweeping through drawers and cabinets with the sort of practiced calm that only years of scrounging could teach. The med room gave up a handful of stim packs, some antibiotics, a few rolls of half-crumbled bandage. Not enough to stock a settlement, but enough to matter. I slipped into what must have been the nurse's station. Little desks boxed in by low counters, everything coated in dust and time, clipboards, pens, old charts, most of it junk now. But a drawer stuck halfway open caught my attention. Inside, beneath a stack of warped patient forms, sat a bottle of bourbon with the cap twisted loose, half the contents still intact. Whoever left it hadn't finished their shift. I tucked it into my pack. Waste not. An exam room off to the right held more promise. The overhead light hung dead, but my eyes adjusted quickly. Scalpels, clamps, a tray of tools still wrapped in brittle packaging. A cracked diagnostic holotape I'd sort through later. Anything useful went into the bag. Anything that wasn't, well, I'd learned long ago not to get sentimental over what the world left behind. I kept working quiet, careful, methodical. Supplies back home were getting lean anyway, and since I was already risking my hide in this place, I might as well make the trip worth it and load up with everything I could carry. All of a sudden, the table beside me explodes into splinters.
There you are!
A super mutant roared, swinging a massive sledgehammer, eyes red with fury.
I smell your fear, human!
He bellowed something unintelligible, but I didn't need translation. I ducked behind a broken counter, calculating his reach, the swing arc, the moment I could move. Age had slowed me, but experience made up for muscle.
Time to die!
I rolled, let him overshoot, then put 5 precise rounds into him.
Gonna splatter your brain!
Chest, shoulder, neck. Weak points I knew from past hunts. He crumpled, but the noise was deafening. Others would know soon enough. I grabbed the bag and bolted for the side door, taking advantage of the shadows, the debris, the small alcoves to mask my movement. Out the door, the gray wasteland light hitting me like a slap. Lungs burning, legs screaming.
Gonna kill you!
I managed to get halfway to the tree line, then came the beeps.
I'm hungry!
Suicide mutant, mini nuke strapped to his chest, closing fast. Panic flared, but I didn't freeze. I calculated distance, the timing, the trajectory. I fired just right.
This is the age of the super mutant!
The blast threw me back, ears ringing, heat searing my jacket, but the mutant and the other ugly green hounds nearby were gone. I scrambled to my feet, bag clutched tight. The cabin was still a day's hike up the ridgeline. It was almost dark, and I could smell rain on the wind. Sharp, earthy, promising a rough night if I stayed exposed. I kept low, pushing on, scanning the tree line, listening to see if I was being pursued. Nothing. The mutants had bigger problems now, courtesy of their friend with the nuke. At this point, I wasn't about to march blind into the night. My legs had been running since yesterday, lungs dragging, eyelids heavy. Pushed too far and I'd end up face down in the mud, meds wasted, stranger dead anyway. I slipped off the trail, found a rocky overhang tucked in the slope. Good sight lines, decent cover, enough to hole up for a few hours. I set my pack down, rifle across my knees, ears tuned to the woods, just long enough to steal some rest, to let the storm break and pass. Then I'd make the last climb home. I pulled my coat tight, hat dropped down, and tried to get comfortable. It was cold, but not cold enough to risk a fire or the smoke. The forest waited. Cabin waited. Stranger waited. And if I was lucky, I'd still have enough fight left to get there. A noise tugged me awake, soft, deliberate. I blinked, hand already on my rifle, and found myself staring into the glassy eyes of a rad stag standing 10 paces off, antlers wide, breath steaming in the cool dawn. It didn't spook, didn't charge, just stood there watching me like it was weighing something. On any other day, I'd be hunting it for winter meat, but not today. I had to get back. The beast blinked slow, then turned and slipped into the brush, quiet as smoke. I'd slept longer than I wanted. The storm had passed, but the ground was slick, the air heavy with that wet forest smell. My body ached from the sprint, the fight, the night on stone. The stranger didn't have the luxury of me dragging my feet, so I forced mine uphill. The ridge climb was brutal. Hours of roots, mud, and switchbacks that never seemed to end. Every step dragged me closer to collapse, but I kept the bag tight, meds dry. Stopped only to sip water, chew something hard enough to hurt my jaw, and keep my head clear. By midday, the sun was nothing but a smear through the clouds, and by late afternoon, my knees were screaming, lungs burning like I'd swallowed fire. As I crested the last rise, a herd of rad stag cut across the tree line below the cabin. More than I'd seen in one place in years. Enough meat to last a long stretch if I could bag one. I filed it away for later. Couldn't afford the detour now. The sky bled orange as I trudged into the clearing, just after sunset. My garden lay quiet, cabin dark against the slope. Except not dark. A thin line of smoke curling lazy from the chimney. My fire hadn't burned this long. No chance. Someone had stoked it. The stranger, awake, or something else. I approached the cabin slow, rifle raised, every sense on edge. The smoke curled steady, not wild, not the mark of a raider's torch. Still, I circled wide, checked the shadows, then eased the door open. Inside, Bear sat by the fire, little head low, watching the stranger on the cot like he'd been on guard the whole time. The warmth inside hit me after the damp night outside. I stripped off my coat, hung it by the door, then moved closer. The man stirred at my shadow, eyelids fluttering, skin still pale under the fever but not as clammy as before. He knew I was there. I dug into the bag, pulled out one of the stems and a couple chems and did what patchwork I could. Told him these would help. His lips moved, tried shaping words, but nothing came clear. Just a rasp, half-formed syllables. I set a hand on his shoulder, told him to rest and we'll check again in the morning. Bear huffed like he approved, then padded over to the bed, climbing up beside me as I finally let myself lie down. Fire cracked in the hearth. The cabin was warm, and the stranger breathed shallow but steady. For the first time in 2 days, I let sleep come easy. Morning filtered weak through the shutters, the kind that never quite warms the bones. The stranger's breathing sounded steadier than the day before, fever broken some, though he was still riding the edge. I figured food might help. Out back, the chickens clucked their complaints as usual. I'd trapped a couple of them up in Far Harbor years ago. I hauled the damn crate halfway across the Commonwealth before I finally made it back, and just in time as the crate was barely hanging together. They never laid regular, but now and then I managed a few eggs, meals that felt like a gift out here. I gathered what I could, muttering about that faint, rad tang that no amount of cooking ever hid. Didn't matter. Today called for something decent. When I came back in, the fire was low but burning steady. A few logs had been moved. Proof the stranger had been awake enough to stoke it during the night. Bear barely lifted his head from the bed, content to let me handle the morning. The stranger, though, was sitting upright on the cot, pale but steadier than before, wrapped in blankets and watching me. I set the eggs on the table and moved to check him over. The wounds looked angry but clean enough for now. He winced when I pulled back the bandages, but there was strength behind it, more than I'd expected. Infection hadn't let go yet. I cleaned it as best I could, fresh wrappings from the scraps I had left, stitched spots holding tight for now. Told him to rest. Until that fever broke, he wasn't out of danger. He managed to rasp out his thanks, rough voice fighting through the sickness. I told him breakfast was coming, that it wasn't much, but it would do. When I asked his name, he gave me one, Ray. I gave mine in return. The air shifted the moment I said it. His face changed, just a flicker, like the name had brushed against something buried deep. Recognition, or maybe just memory. Hard to tell. He covered it quick, but I caught it. I didn't let on, though. Just finished tying off the fresh wrap and stepped back, pretending it was nothing. But inside, I felt it. Names carried weight, and sometimes they stirred ghosts best left to sleep. I mentioned I'd spotted a herd of radstag not far off on my way back yesterday. Meat like that could keep us fed for months if I got lucky. I figured it was worth a try. I checked his cot one last time, Bear hovering like a second set of eyes, then shouldered my rifle. The old Tinker Tom special felt solid against my back, the familiar weight I never stepped outside without. I left him there with the fire stoked, water set close, and Bear circling like he wanted to come along. Told him no, this one I'd do alone. The day was cool, sky heavy with clouds, good tracking weather. Out here, every step carried a gamble, but radstag meant food, and food meant another day alive. Retracing my steps, I managed to find the faint trail that wound toward where I'd seen the herd grazing. The woods felt different after the Yaoguai the other day. Every creak of a tree branch, every snap of brush under my boot made me stop. Listen, things like that stay with you, makes you sharper but also slower, the kind of slower that can keep you alive. Radstag was what I was after, not another dance with a mountain full of claws and teeth. Radstag tasted better anyway. Yao was nothing but gristle and regret. So I kept my eyes to the ground and my ears to the wind, moving with the patience that only comes from years of doing the same thing over and over. Tracks were there if you knew how to see them. Two-toed prints pressed into damp earth, soft scatterings of fur caught on brambles, grass bent just so. The herd I'd seen yesterday hadn't moved far. They never do unless something chases them. I crouched low, hand brushing the soil, reading the story it left me. Old soldiers used maps. Out here, dirt and droppings were mine. It took the better part of an hour, slow crawl through brush and over stone, before I caught sight of them. A small herd, 6 or 7, heads down, chewing their way across a meadow. I picked my spot under a pine, rifle steady against the trunk. Didn't rush. Never rush. One good shot beats a dozen wasted. The herd bolted, but one didn't rise. Dropped clean, right through the chest. Quick and merciful, the way I figured hunting ought to be. Field dressing came next. A messy business, but I'd done it too many times to flinch. Knife worked steady, cutting meat from bone, setting aside what I could carry. Organs and scraps I left behind. Out here, nothing went to waste. Wolves, mongrels, maybe even another Yao. Something would be along to claim it before sundown. The wasteland ate everything eventually. I lashed the carcass to a crude travois I'd built from 2 stripped saplings and rope, just enough to drag without breaking my back. Hard work still. Muscles pulled, joints complained with every step, but I leaned into it. Been leaning into it my whole life. By the time I started back up the ridge, the smell of blood was thick, the weight of the kill dragging heavy behind me. But we'd eat well for days, maybe stew, maybe roasted, something better than thin soup and stale corn. Bear would be pleased. And the stranger, well, if he pulled through, maybe a full belly would give him reason to keep fighting. The travois groaned against the porch as I dragged it up the last slope, legs aching, shoulders burning. I left the carcass under the awning to dress later and pushed inside, hoping for nothing more than a warm fire and a few quiet minutes to sit. The cot was empty. My gut dropped cold for a second, hand drifting toward the pistol at my belt. Then the bathroom door creaked. Out came the stranger, hunched, limping, one hand braced against the wall like every step was a war. His face twisted with pain, but his mouth worked just enough to mumble something about not pissing the cot. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding and slung his arm over my shoulder, steering him back to his spot by the fire. He dropped onto the cot like a sack of rocks, sweat beading on his forehead. Dinner was quiet, save for the fire popping. I cut strips of radstag, roasted them on skewers, and passed one over. He took it without a word, chewed slow, eyes fixed somewhere just past me, like he couldn't quite bring himself to look dead on. Conversation didn't flow, it tripped, sputtered, died. Every question I lobbed his way came back half-broken, vague. The kind of answers a man gives when he's guarding something. Didn't take much experience to know he was hiding pieces of himself. Trouble was, I'd lived long enough to know some truths are better left buried, at least for a while. Bear, meanwhile, had stuffed himself shameless on scraps. The little mutt sprawled half under the cot, half in front of the fire, belly stretched wide and snoring like a saw in a lumber yard. The stranger sat chewing slow, gaze still sliding off mine like oil on water. His silence said more than words ever could. Something was off. And if he weren't broken up from the wounds, I'd have been far more concerned. But I wasn't about to press, not yet. Days slipped into weeks, weeks into nearly a month. Out here, time didn't keep itself by calendars or clocks. It moved with the chores, splitting wood, tending the garden, checking traps, smoking what meat I could before it spoiled. 100 little tasks to keep a man alive, each one simple enough, but stack them together and they made the rhythm of my days. Ray grew stronger in that rhythm. At first he leaned heavy on the walls, shuffling from cot to chair and back again, like a man trying to teach himself to walk all over. Then came short steps to the balcony, one hand on the railing, jaw tight with pain but eyes hard with determination. Eventually he was limping the length of the cabin without so much as a groan. Whatever fire kept him alive when the Yaoguai tore him up was still burning hot inside. Bear tolerated the intruder better than I expected. Didn't even growl when Ray managed to scratch behind his ears one morning, though he gave me another of those side-eye looks like I'd been replaced. Traitor. The mole rat made its usual appearances too. One afternoon I caught the bastard dragging a whole gourd out of the garden, tail whipping behind him like he was proud of it. I put 3 rounds into the dirt trying to spook him off, missed every one, and Bear barked himself hoarse on the porch. The mole rat vanished, only to pop up again at the far end of the cabin, head tilting like it was mocking me. Ray was on the porch, actually cracking a slight smirk of enjoyment. I didn't see the humor. Evenings were quieter. We'd sit by the fire, Bear curled up between us, and I'd talk just to fill the silence. Old hunting tricks. The time I patched a leaky rain catch with melted bottle caps. The way radstag tend to herd together more than folks think. Card games led to more subtle conversations, although Ray listened more than he spoke. Every once in a while he would let something slip. He said once that he wasn't just wandering, that he was out looking, hunting. I didn't press, didn't need to. Saw the way his jaw worked, the way his gaze slid to the fire like it was the only thing keeping his anger in check. Another night he let slip that his family had been taken from him years back. He was maybe 12 when it happened. I sat there, nodding slow, feeding another log to the flames. Didn't say much, didn't need to, just listened. Next morning, after checking the traps, I returned to the cabin. Ray was stoking the fire and looked much better, healthier. I made some hearty stew from the last of the radstag meat and some vegetables from the garden. Over the next hour, conversation flickered here and there. I asked about wounds, about food, about the trails he'd seen. His answers were clipped, cautious, eyes sliding to the fire or the floor. Something about him didn't sit right, a tension that would have seemed overblown if he weren't still weakened from his injuries. I didn't press, just watched, measured, noting every twitch and glance. Chaos had a way of finding me lately, even in the quiet of the mountains. But something about this one, this stranger, felt different. After giving the dinner plates a quick wash, I noticed the water pressure from the rain catch was pretty low, more than likely leaves and debris from the last storm clogging it up. I grabbed my bucket and headed up the slope, muttering under my breath about the endless chore of keeping the system running. Better check it now than have nothing for the next few days. I knelt by the catch, pulling out leaves and mud, prying out the bigger chunks of debris with a stick. The water started flowing a little stronger, though still far from ideal. My hands were busy, but my mind wasn't. It was focused on Ray in the last few weeks. Just a feeling in my gut. When I returned, I saw Ray sitting out on the porch, legs drawn up, my rifle resting across his lap. His eyes locked onto me, steady, cold, unreadable. There was something in them that made the skin between my shoulders tighten, the kind of look you don't ignore when a man's holding a gun. I cursed myself for leaving mine behind. Habit usually kept it slung over my shoulder, but today of all days I'd walked out without it. My chest tightened, imagining the worst. My finger twitched, wanting to grab my 10 mil, but I let it be. My days of drawing first on a man are long behind me. Maybe trust is all I have left to give. But just as that tension started to coil tight in my gut, Ray's gaze drifted off me and out toward the mountains, his jaw loosening. He muttered something about just waiting on that damn mole rat, shifting his attention to the tree line as I walked past him. A simple enough reason to be out here with a gun, but whether that was all there was to it, I couldn't tell. I grabbed 2 mugs from the counter, filling them with the last of the bitter coffee I'd brewed earlier. Stepping onto the porch, I handed him a mug without a word. He lifted it, grimaced at the taste, but drank anyway because it was all there was. As he shifted, I noticed the small carved charm on his leather necklace catching the light. The carving was simple, worn from years of handling, but I could tell it meant something, so I asked him about it. He paused for a few moments as if to gather his words. He told me it had been given to him as a token from someone he wronged a long time ago. A small thing, but it carried the weight of closure, something he had carried with him all these years. His story came slowly, clipped at first, then spilling out. His mother died when he was young. His father, murdered long ago by the hands of gunners. Every word connected, the story he told, and to the man I once was, the gunner I had been. The name hit like a brick to the gut. I'd heard it before, long ago, buried under gunfire and bad choices. That night came back in flashes. Smoke, yelling, a deal gone sideways somewhere out near Lexington. Nobody knew who fired first. Hell, I still don't. But once the guns were up, instinct took over. I saw a man draw, and I drew faster. One pull, one flash, and it was done. He went down before I even realized what I'd done. Didn't mean to, didn't want to. Just another job that never should have happened. I was young then. In the wasteland, you latch on to whatever keeps you alive. A gang, a group, someone to watch your back. The gunners promised safety, bravado, power. I got caught up in it, but I never really belonged. That night when I pulled the trigger, it wasn't the life I wanted, and it wasn't a man who deserved it. The weight of that decision has carried me for 20 years. I deserted the gunners in the dead of night, vanished into the mountains, and swore I'd never look back. Years passed, and I assumed that was the end of it. Thought I'd outrun the past, hidden well enough that no one would ever find me. Never in my reckoning did I imagine it would be his son standing here now, hunting the man who had killed his father, the weight of vengeance nearly tangible in the quiet of my cabin. I didn't speak. Nothing needed saying. Every motion, every glance, every small pause told the story for both of us. The past had finally caught up in the mountains, circling back through this cabin, through this man I had saved. He didn't have to speak the accusation. I'd carried it for 20 years. I knew I was the man he was looking for, and I know he already knew it. pushed myself up from the chair, joints stiff, heading for the door. Out of the corner of my eye, I caught Ray, his hand clenched tight around the rifle, jaw working like he was chewing on anger. For a heartbeat, I thought that was it, that the past had come to collect, but the trigger stayed quiet. A low rumble of thunder rolled through the peaks, breaking the moment, reminding me rain wasn't far off. The fire crackled, warming the cabin, but it wasn't warmth that lingered. It was the weight of old deeds pressing down, the knowledge that survival sometimes meant carrying more than just yourself. The image of Ray on the porch still lingered. My past and this moment collided in a way I couldn't untangle. And for the first time in a long while, I realized I wasn't going to lie awake worrying about being killed in my sleep. If it came to that, I deserved it. I ruffled Bear's ears a little longer than usual, traced my fingers down his back, muttering a quiet promise that this might be the last belly rub for a while. He leaned into it, oblivious to the tension simmering through the cabin. The fire burned steady, throwing long shadows across the walls, the logs crackling in rhythm with my heartbeat. Outside, the night settled over the ridge, the wind whispering through the trees, carrying the scent of thawing snow and distant pines. Ray remained on the porch, rifle across his lap, staring straight ahead, hatred in his eyes, watching the darkness. I climbed into bed, Bear curling at my feet, and let the quiet take over. The mountains stretched beyond the windows, indifferent and eternal. Tonight there would be no more fighting, no more thoughts of what had been done, only the cold night, the warmth of the fire, and the uneasy knowledge that some debts are survived, not repaid. I woke to Bear's wet nose nudging my face, little licks demanding breakfast. I was alive, throat intact. I leaned up, scanning the cabin. Fire blazing, logs freshly stacked. The cot looked almost orderly, blankets folded neatly, something resting on top. My stomach tightened. I moved closer, cautious, curious. No Ray, not a sound. I stepped to the window, scanning the ridge, the slope below, the trees swaying in the morning breeze. Nothing. Then my eyes caught it, a small piece of paper resting atop the folded blankets. And on it, carefully placed, the leather necklace with the carved charm. I froze for a moment, letting it sink in. The charm glinted in the firelight. The cabin felt impossibly quiet. Outside, the mountains stretched eternal, indifferent. And in that quiet, I realized the story wasn't over. Not for him, not for me, but for a moment, just a breath. I let the tension ease, letting the significance of what had been left behind settle into the room, into the fire, into the spaces between Bear's small, contented snuffles. My eyes lingered on the folded paper, fingers hovering before I finally reached for it, slow and unsure. Part of me wanted to know, part of me didn't. Truth carried weight, and I wasn't sure how much more I could shoulder. I unfolded it.
Henry, my full name is Raymond Calder. I was 12 years old when I watched you kill my father. He wasn't perfect, none of us are. But he didn't deserve to die the way he did. I swore that day I would see you pay. I carried that hatred every day for years, every bone in my body fueled by the need for revenge. I spent decades looking for you, tracking you, following you. I waited 20 years for this moment. Many nights I had that rifle pointed at your head. But here, in this cabin, in the mountains, I found something I never expected. An old man with a gray beard and a kindness I wasn't prepared to face. In all my life, never in a million years did I think I would pay forward forgiveness to the man who killed my father. I have carried this necklace, a token given to me long ago as a gesture of forgiveness, a closure for a wrong I committed. I leave it to you now. Not as a threat, not as a reminder, but as a gesture. So you might know that the weight of the past can be eased, even if only a little. Perhaps this can give some measure of peace to both our stories. You saved me. tended to my wounds, gave me food, a fire, and quiet. You even managed to make the worst coffee in the wasteland, and somehow I appreciated it. Thank you for helping me discover something in myself I didn't think I had left. P.S. I gotta admit, your Radstag Mountain stew is something else. Also, I never got the chance to call you out for cheating at cards, so I'm doing so now, you sneaky bastard. And give Bear a belly rub for me. That dog has more fire and courage than most men I've known. I'm gonna miss the little guy. Signed, Raymond.
I read the letter again, letting the words sink in. A weight lifted I didn't realize I'd been carrying. A small smile tugged at the corner of my mouth, maybe even a tear, though I'd never admitted. I hoped he came back someday, though I knew better. Life here would go on, whatever normal meant now. I poured myself a stiff drink I'd been saving for special occasions, lifted the glass and stepped out onto the porch. Kicked my feet up on the railing, rifle in my lap, my eyes roaming over the garden. Bear perched beside me, tail wagging lazily, soaking in the spring air like he owned the place. It was a beautiful day. Like clockwork, dirt exploded in the air and my favorite mole rat popped up, bold as ever, right at the edge of the garden. He didn't see me as I silently raised my rifle. I aimed carefully, and with a sense of relief I knew that this time I wouldn't miss.
The wasteland keeps its secrets, but not for long. Join us again soon. A new stranger steps into the light, and with them, a brand new story. Coming up this season on Ash Rats, Stories from the Wasteland. Every survivor has a tale. Every wanderer carries a past. And every episode reveals another life carved from the ruins. Eddie, the detective, a missing heirloom, a family in danger, a private eye who never stops digging until the job is done. Evelyn, the assassin, a hired gun who only eliminates the worst of the worst, is forced to choose between a contract and her conscience. Henry, the Outlander, a reclusive hermit, rescues a wounded stranger and discovers the real truth of his identity. Darren, the opportunist, a greedy wanderer searches for a legendary vault that winds up being far more than anything he imagined. Marcus, the soldier, an elite Brotherhood recovery team on a mission to find lost tech, uncovers something far more terrifying. Veronica, the scavenger, a gentle forager who gathers the stories the dead left behind, discovers a new companion and a journey she never expected. Grimjaw, the raider, a ruthless clan chief and his men become the hunted by something relentless and out for blood. Ollie the robot, a small and hopeful helper and his owner, discover that in the wasteland, even tragedy can bring new beginnings. Clint the ghoul, a silver-tongued wanderer with a taste for Nuka-Cola and dusty old novels, sets out to find the motherlode of pre-war books. Noah, the survivor, a man from the old world, lost in time, awakens only to find the ruins of a past he doesn't remember.
Vault door cycling sequence.
Dark mysteries, Violent clashes, heartfelt journeys, twisted secrets, hope where you'd least expect it. Vault 440 presents 10 different lives, 10 different stories, all born out of the ashes. There are a million stories in the wasteland. These are some of them.